So right triangle trig, I know we've already done some in our weekly homeworks, but this whole unit is all about triangles and using trig with triangles, so I thought we should start here. So let's draw a right triangle. And let's say our unknown angle is this one in the bottom. So you can have an x there, you can have a theta there, you can have, you could know the angle measure. It just depends on the problem. But the first thing that you always want to do on these is label your triangle. So remember, across from the right angle is always your hypotenuse. And then the opposite and the adjacent side depend on where your important angle is. So what I always do is take my angle and draw a little dotted line, and that always leads me to the opposite side. And then that leaves me with adjacent. So your angle should always be between adjacent and hypotenuse. Any questions on labeling it? Alright, let's write our trig functions then. So today we're just going to look at our main three: sine, cosine, and tangent. So we know sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tan is opposite over adjacent. And so hopefully your math teachers in the past, they probably had some little say in or whatever, but I always say, oh heck, another hour of algebra. And that tells you your ratios. So, oh heck, another hour of algebra. Some say so, katoa, however you remember it. I don't care how you remember it, as long as you remember it. So, let's try some. So we're looking for missing sides and missing angles. So let's look at missing sides first. So let's say our triangle looks like this. Okay, so the first thing you always want to do is label the triangle. So here's our right angle. So across from it is always our hypotenuse. And then the other two are based off of our important angle, which in this one is 20. So across from the 20 is always the opposite. And then that leaves us adjacent. Any question on the labeling? So if I'm looking at this, I know the hypotenuse. I'm trying to find adjacent. So which of my trig functions is adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine. So that's what we want to use. So we want to say cosine of the angle. So cosine of 20 equals and it's adjacent over hypotenuse. So x over 7. Okay, so then you want to solve for x because you're trying to figure out whatever it is. So in this one, it's x divided by 7. How do I get rid of divide by 7? Yeah, multiply by 7. So we times both sides by 7. And then my x is all by itself. But what's the first thing I check for in my calculator? Degree mode. Good. So we go to mode beside the blue button. First, turn your calculator on. Then you go to mode, and it's the third line down. So we want to be in degree. And then we just type it in. 7 times cosine of 20. And hopefully you get 6.58. And that's it. So in these triangles, you're talking about lengths of sides and measures of angles. So you always want to make sure that it makes sense. So in this one, our hypotenuse is 7. That's the longest side. So you know that your other sides have to be shorter than that. So I know 6.58 is shorter than that. So just always check, make sure it actually makes sense. Alright, let's do another one. Let's say it looks like this. So let's say our angle is 85 degrees. Our side over here is 2.57. And we want this one. That's 2.57. Okay, so again, step 1 is always label the triangle. So if this is my right angle, across from it is my hypotenuse. And so then my important angle is 85. So if I draw my little line, that takes me over here to 2.57, so that's my opposite. And then that leaves me adjacent. So which trig function do I want to use? Tan. Good. So I know the opposite. I'm trying to find adjacent. So opposite and adjacent is tan. So we do tan of the angle. So tan of 85 equals. And then it's O over A. So 2.57 over X. Any questions setting it up? Okay. So in our first one, we had 7 in the denominator, so multiply both sides by 7. We want to do the same thing here, but now x is in our denominator. So multiply both sides by x. And that gives us x tan of 85 equals 2.57. But I still need to get x by itself, so how can I move this tan 85? Good. Divide by tan 85. And then we just type it in our calculator. So 2.57 divided by tan of 85. And hopefully you get 0.22. Questions on that? And so if I saw that, I would think, I don't know if that's right. But if we look at our angles of our triangle, we know this one's 90 and this one's 85. So what does that mean about this third angle? Yeah, it's really, really small. So it only is a 5-degree angle. So it's just really super tiny, which means that this other angle, or the side, is also going to be really small. So that's why that length is so small. Questions? Alright, let's find some missing angles then. So when we're finding missing angles, we have to use the inverse trig functions. And so those are sine to the negative 1, cosine to the negative 1, and tan to the negative 1. And so to get those on the calculator, you hit second and then sine, second cosine, or second tan, depending on which one that you need. So let's do one. Okay, so in these, you still want to start by labeling the triangle. So here's our right angle, across from it's our hypotenuse. Now in this one, we don't know our angle down here, x, but that's what we're trying to find. So that's still the one that our sides are based off of. So my dotted line takes me to the opposite, and then that leaves me adjacent. So which trig function do I use? Sine, good. So we do sine of x, because we don't know the angle, that's what we're trying to find. And then we know sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Our opposite's 15, our hypotenuse is 20. Any questions setting it up? So then, to get x by itself, we have to get rid of this sign. So we do sine inverse, sine to the negative 1. So then that leaves me x equals sine negative 1. And now that 15 over 20 is what goes inside of that sine inverse. And then we just type that in our calculator. And again, to get that negative 1, you hit second sign. And then 15 divided by 20. And hopefully you get 48.59. Questions? You may not get that. I'll just do one more. So we label our triangle. Here's our right angle. So that tells me that 8.75 is my hypotenuse. X is my important angle. Draw my dotted line, takes me to the opposite. And that means that 5.5 is my adjacent. So which trig function do I use? Cosine. Good. Because I know adjacent and hypotenuse, which is cosine. So cosine of x, because we don't know the angle, equals, and then it's a over h, so 5.5 over 8.7. And then I think these are easier because now all you have to do is inverse cosine and type it in and you're done. You don't have to worry about if you have to multiply or divide or anything. So x equals cosine inverse of 5.5 over 8.75. Again, to type it in, you just hit second cosine. And then 5.5 divided by 8.75. Or you can type it as a fraction, it don't matter. And hopefully you get 51.06 degrees. I forgot to put degrees up here. Question.